Louis Bell wrote a wonderful book on the art of illumination, and it was the first time that illumination and engineering were even thought of as a thing that might go together, like Steinmetz in Radiation, Light, and Illumination, his 1930s book. And these guys were the real pioneers in the field. And I came along a generation later and was a pioneer perhaps in professionalizing this. There were other people who came along at that time who worked in this as well and who brought some focus to lighting as a profession. You know, like Bill Richardson, like Leslie Wheel, like Jules Horton, like David Mintz, you know, and then there's the younger ones again, you know, coming up now, who are working in the field. Few people had the dedication to excellence that Hartman had. Hartman had such an eye for what ought to be, that he added, not personally, but his work and the writings added to my sense of why this Russell philosophy of the elements of ethics in what ought to be, because what's good to you might not be good to somebody else. What's right for you might not be right for somebody else. That doesn't make, so, you know, what's wrong for somebody could be right for somebody else. So there's no right and wrong. There's no one solution. But when you're dealing with an individual or a public project, there is something that ought to be, and you have to separate all the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, and all the other components of that philosophically, and you have to look at the potential solutions. It's sort of like the sketch outlines of an artist to see, you know, what the final composition should be.
Let's talk about revolutionary spaces and revolutionary lighting that never has existed before that you did. I remember one that you did a showroom for a plastic furniture manufacturer. Remember it well?
I remember it. Yes, well, this guy had plastic furniture like the stuff in here, and he shined lights on it, and all you saw was the lights reflected in the plastic furniture.
What was the name of the company? Artemity? Artemity?
Artemity? Could have been Artemity. Furniture.
It was located, the one with the white walls.
Yeah.
The glowing walls.
Yeah, and it was very simple. That what one needed was a room that was luminous to put this furniture in. Now that was, and it couldn't be expensive, and it had to be flexible, and so we took scenery methodology. And we used cotton sheets, and we stapled them and glued them to wooden frames, and we put fluorescent lights behind them. And then in order to get a little modeling and character and glint in the plastic, we used these illuminated snakes and put them on the floor in little coils like lamps near the furniture. And it was a wonderful room. People walked in there and were just, wow, look at this. You know, in this glowing thing, and everybody looked kind of wonderful, because we could color the fluorescent with tubes, you know, colored tubes, get exactly the quality we wanted.
Was that one of your first totally revolutionary spaces?
I'm not sure. You know, you can do revolutionary spaces with what looks to be evenly spaced downlights.
But as I remember, you never did just regular downlights.
Well, I did from time to time. But I would have, the downlight pattern might be the same, but all the distributions coming into the downlights or the colors coming into the downlights were different. So you walked through this aura that you didn't even know why it was there. But I always had some element of seen light. I always had some light source in the room to give the sense of why that light was there. or that why that brightness was there. I learned there was another great person early on, figure in lighting, named Louis Smith. Louis Smith I met through Stanley McCandless because we were doing some historic work. And I loved this stuff because it was right up my art history theme. And McCandless said, we have to call in Louis Smith because he knows all about ornamental fixtures, all about this decorative lighting. And I met Louis Smith, and he just knew all this stuff, every ornament. And it was a very special experience to do that, and we would get inspiration from going to old jobs like Carrera and Hastings and looking at the wonderful torchieres on the library stairs. I said, oh, this is the most elegant thing in the world. So we did wonderful ornamental torchieres inspired by the New York Public Library for the Helmsley Palace Hotel. You walked in, you got this absolutely astounding feeling that you were the most special person in the world coming to this very special place. The IBM building in Westlake, Texas was, in modern terms, a home for computer programmers that you felt like you were going to work in the Versailles Palace. It didn't look anything like the Versailles Palace, but there was an amazing feeling because what you really did, you came into this very wonderful grand spaces and wound up in your destination, which was a little rabbit warren, or a little, where you sat and wrote your computer programs. But all the rest of this stuff was an inspiration. Had the world's best parking garage, because that was an important part of employee morale. I had one executive ask me, he said, we've got to make the lighting in this place so good that I keep all my key people. I said, you want to keep your key people? How many employees do you have? He said, 85,000. I said, how many of them are key? He said, well, not that many. I said, well, why don't you buy a golf club? Give them all memberships. Why don't you stop serving that crummy food in the cafeteria? Make an executive dining room where you can really dine, like you do when you go out of here, I said, that's not a bad idea. He bought a golf club, got a better caterer for his dining room, fixed it up. We did a wonderful job for him, and you got to be careful. You can't achieve every goal with lighting. But that doesn't mean that as a member of the design team that you can't bring your worldly experience and offer to your client a solution that really meets his needs.
Projects that you've done over the years, what were the ones that you thought were going to go really well and didn't work like you wanted them to? Were you ever limited by science?
Not really. There was never a time when really great designers were limited by science. If you wanted to see pageantry at its height, you had to see the works of Albert Speer for Hitler at the Kaisersplatz in Munich. The photographs of that will knock your socks off. Maybe he didn't have sky trackers, but he had aircraft searchlights. And so there was never a limit. And you look at some of the things done at the Chicago World's Fair and the New York World's Fair,
Or St. Louis Fair.
Yeah, wonderful things were done. And the only limit is your imagination,
But
No, it's the only limit is your imagination. Low budget jobs are easy to do. It's how well you do with them. I never get confused when I go to buy a car. I know exactly how much money is in my pocket, and I don't go to the custom-made Maserati showroom to buy one. But the client I work for, I do homes and palaces for the modern Medici, and they expect a lot and they get a lot. They don't get a lot by me following rules.
Any other great projects you want to talk about? One of my favorites is the Mobil Oil gas station.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a really fine example of if you're a good designer and you're honest and the client understands that you really care for them and work for them, they'll give you a lot of latitude. When I was doing that, I was, an officer of the IES and working on, raising money so that we could have a workshop for teachers of lighting and some of my other, things that I thought would be a benefit to the profession at large. And we did this design for a Mobil gas station, which was within what I thought was an appropriate budget. But Mobil didn't agree. Mobil thought it was slightly overpriced. And they said, Howard, would you please come out to California? Now, Nick Estey was the number 2 guy at Mobil. He got there because he's the guy who came up with Mobil 1 synthetic oil. And Nick was the guardian angel of the design team for Mobil at the time, which was Shermayeff, Geismar, Elliot Noyes, Alan Goldberg, and me. I've been working for Mobil at the time since 1966 in some project or another. And I said, I can't come out to California because I'm doing this fundraising event and it's a really very critical program. And he said, oh, you're raising money for some do-gooder project? I'll get in the corporate jet and we'll fly to New York. But you got to give me one of your famous lunches. So in comes the 24th Street became Limousine Row, and the Mobil executives, Nick Estey included, came up to the apartment and we went through this thing, and he said, Howard, do you know anything about the gas station business? And I said, no.